Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate.
And then he said something about the darling buds of May, but don't worry, you don't have to know it.
Cause you're listening to Eternal Light. Eternal Light.
Shakespeare for all.
Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of Eternal Lines. Today is the first part of a 2-part episode I recorded with Jacob Cherry to talk all things Hamlet. In this episode, we try to unpack some of the big money questions about the show, and in the next part, which will come out in a couple weeks, we get more into our personal connections with the show. Just a heads up, I bungled some of the recording for this episode, so the sound quality at the beginning of the episode isn't the best, but around 4 minutes, the quality improves a bunch. So, just keep listening and it will get better. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the Eternal Lines podcast by the Shakespeare Company at UCLA. I am here with the illustrious Jacob Cherry.
Ooh,
and we are going
me.
to be talking all things Hamlet because Jacob is kind of a Hamlet aficionado. So we're kind of going to be going through like the big money, not conspiracies, but like the big money topics about Hamlet of like Hamlet and Gertrude and Hamlet and Horatio and Ophelia and blah, blah, blah.
So much is left in the air, so there's lots to be
Yes,
unpacked.
all of the big questions. We were in it in spring quarter, and then he did it in high school 3 times. You were in it 3
In
times?
5th grade. Oh my
Oh my God.
wait.
Oh, right,
my
because you were
God.
Horatio in 5th grade. Okay,
Well, I've
perfect.
done this a lot. Okay.
So yes,
Now I feel like the
Jacob-
pressure of, I must really know it.
Jacob has lots of experience with this play, so we're gonna pick his brain a little bit. Okay, so for people who may be listening who may not be well versed in Hamlet, I feel like it's very easy to know, like, oh, that's a big Shakespeare play, but not actually know the nitty-gritty of it. At the beginning of the play, Hamlet's dad shows up as a ghost and says, "My brother, your uncle Claudius, who is now king, killed me. You should avenge my death and kill your uncle." And then Hamlet kind of spends the rest of the play in a crux about what to do and whether or not he should kill his uncle.
Not to mention his uncle married his mom.
Yes, and his uncle married his mother,
Sheesh.
which complicates Hamlet's relationship with his mother, obviously. Ophelia is his love interest, but Hamlet, spoiler alert, Hamlet accidentally, there's going to be spoilers in this, obviously. Hamlet accidentally ends up killing Ophelia's dad, which sends everybody into a
Polonius.
tizzy.
Mhm.
Ophelia ends up drowning and going crazy. And then her brother Laertes shows back up and is totally distraught over the death of his dad and his brother, or dad and sister. And he is like dead set on killing Hamlet. But then in the end, everyone ends up dying, except for Horatio. He is Hamlet's best friend. And he's kind of the one who like sticks by Hamlet throughout all the hullabaloo. Yes, that is the bare bones.
It's a lot of hullabaloo. That's a good
A
word.
lot of hullabaloo. And a lot of
Mhm.
like brain internal hullabaloo.
That's right.
So of these big money questions, what do you want to
Yeah.
start with?
What do you think like comes chronologically, themes wise?
We could talk Ghost Dad.
Let's talk Ghost Dad.
Okay.
Okay. How real do you think he is?
Well, I feel like in the beginning he has to be kind of real because Horatio and Bernardo and the other guys all see him.
Mhm.
But I think especially in that scene, like he comes back in a scene with Hamlet and Gertrude later. And in that scene, I feel like that's Hamlet is making up his madness for a lot of the play, but I think that in that scene, that's one of the times where we actually see him kind of on the brink of
I
actually
agree.
being mad.
I agree.
And that's where I'm like, I think that the ghost dad in that scene might just be Hamlet's imagination
Yeah. Yeah, I get that
and like
a lot.
him getting stressed.
So the ghost appears 2 times before that, and both of those times, other people are present to see the ghost, and it's educated people. Horatio's an educated friend of Hamlet. They went to college together, and so you're supposed to be like, oh, I trust this educated man that also sees the ghost. And so we get like it without Horatio and without those guys, we'd be even more concerned about Hamlet's state of mind during all this, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also think it's interesting that it is in a scene with his mom
Mm-hmm.
when he has this like reoccurrence of the ghost.
Yeah.
Because in that scene, he's so. I think that scene is fascinating, and the whole monologue with the two pictures is really
Mhm.
interesting.
That was one of my
And
favorites.
I was reading through that earlier today, and
You do research for this show?
just a tidbit.
It
not
didn't
a
come
ton.
natural to you? Don't you like store it?
I mean, the point is I don't know everything, and I'm hosting the podcast, so
Okay.
I had to kind of look into it. But I was interested in the fact that there's so much language about, like, comparing his dad to different gods, which I thought was very interesting.
Yes.
And, like, it almost seems like in certain parts that he's more of a problem with the fact that his mom and Claudius got married than he does with the fact that Claudius killed his dad.
Yeah. It's, it's the thing of, like, breaking up your family and whatever, like, parent means to him. It's, like, just the idea of that family unit, I think, to tear that up.
Mm-hmm.
And so quickly, too.
Yes.
Like, without... It seems in Hamlet's mind to be, like, this marriage happens so fast after the dad's death that it seems like, are we forgetting this?
Yeah, like, what happened?
It's like,
Mom.
it feels like a rebound,
Yes.
I'm getting married, but it's your uncle.
And I think also it could seem to Hamlet like, oh, you only really care about, like, being queen. You didn't really care about my dad at all. You just cared about the fact that he was king, because now you're on to the next king.
I've also heard things like Gertrude. Some people think it could be like a selfless act that she decided to marry Claudius if it was like, well, I don't want my son to be king. Like, he's too young. I will, like, keep this lineage going. Whereas there's also the idea of the Denmark elective monarchy, where it's like it wasn't just passed on to Claudius, like, it was chosen by
They picked him?
electors. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's a thing in Denmark, apparently.
I didn't know that.
Like, the electors could decide.
Well, yeah, because that's also, like Hamlet at the beginning of the play, is he so pissy, like, even before...
Yeah.
Like, is he so pissy because he's a little bit like, I was supposed to be king?
I don't know. Also, I don't know how much he wanted it. He was away in college. Is he... And maybe that was part of the reason people were like, he's away in college. Like, we need someone to, like, take over now. Like, there can't be that much, unstableness. Claudius probably has more experience, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, like, how much Hamlet wanted that position. I don't know how well he would have done, either.
Yeah.
How well he would have done without knowing about his brother. Without knowing about his uncle. Mm-hmm. And I also wonder. So we're going off so many paths here.
Yeah.
Did Claudius kill with the intent to become king? How would he know he would become king? If it was an electing process, he wouldn't have known. It could have been to be with Gertrude. Maybe they were, like, lovers before. We don't know.
I never thought about that.
But I really like that interpretation, like that Gertrude and Claudius were really close, younger.
Yeah.
But, like, she just married the eldest son,
Yeah.
And there wasn't, like, a lot of love there. Maybe King Hamlet thought there was, but Gertrude was like,
Oh, that's fascinating.
What if she's really close with Claudius? And I think that makes her really interesting, because it goes through, like, she has to go through a lot of denial. However much of an accomplice she is, or how much she knows, like, she would have to deny if she loved Claudius,
Mm-hmm. I think that makes it way more interesting, like, acting wise, of, like, that'd be an awesome challenge, like, as Gertrude, to be attached to this man, but know that he killed your husband, but the husband that you didn't really like as much as this man.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And I don't know when she figures it out, if she's known the whole time, if she was in cahoots, like, if they were,
Ooh.
I don't know.
If they were like, let's kill my husband.
Could you, like, do this little favor? Yeah. And there's definitely, like, potential in the play within the play scene. So for context for listeners.
The play within play?
Yeah.
Yes. So Hamlet decides, okay, I am going to, I got these, I'm like friends with all these actors, so I'm going to pull my actor friends up and we're going to do a play for the king, but we're going to act out like the exact way that Claudius killed my dad. The players are going to do a play that's pretty much just that story. And if the king reacts, then I'll know for sure. Well, because he's like, I don't know if I totally trust what my ghost dad told me. So he's like, but if the king reacts to this play, then I'll know for sure. I will know that this is how he killed my dad and that he did kill my dad. The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. So yes, what were you going to say about the play within the play?
Oh, well, I just think like the play within the play, because like that's always when people are focusing on Claudius, seeing how he reacts. Let's look at Gertrude. Let's see how she reacts.
Whew.
Is she piecing it together then? Is she feeling guilt if she already has known about it? Yeah. I think there's a lot of potential in that scene for her as well.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I think Hamlet himself, there's so much of him in this play. But I think that a lot of the other characters are have very complex things that they're dealing with in a way that like, oh, it's fun. But also what's interesting is like Hamlet's in so much of the play, but like Gertrude, like even Ophelia, like they don't have that many scenes.
Yeah.
But like there's still so many different intricate relationships to mess with.
Totally. And you could play it very simply.
Yeah.
But there's also the potential to go in so many different directions. That's why, I love this one. Is just how much freedom the actors have in like telling their stories. There's so many different ways you can go about it. And I think, part of it is like we have to stay focused on Hamlet's inner, it's all in his head. So everyone else in his life, like a real person, everyone else in your life is a side character. Yeah. And you're just, little old you. But like each of these people, we could have their own play and like really get into it. But we'll never know for sure. Yeah.
We are going to take a short break to talk a little bit about some things coming up and where you can keep up with SCU and Jacob Cherry. In terms of Shakespeare Company, we are gearing up for our winter quarter shows, so make sure you are following us on Instagram at Bruinbard and on Facebook, we're Shakespeare Company at UCLA, to hear more about how to get involved with those shows. And then if you want to keep up with Jacob, you can check out his website, jacobterry.com, for what he has been up to lately. And then applications for Company, which is the sketch comedy group that hosts Spring Sing every year, are due January 15th. So if you want to join Jacob on that adventure, be sure to check that out. Okay, back to Hamlet.
Okay, well, jumping off of this other characters and everything, I want to talk about Ophelia. Okay. Because I have a love-hate relationship with Ophelia. Like, I like her because I have a newfound love of all the ingenues. I used to not like them. This will be probably a whole nother episode of the podcast about my relationship with ingenues. But Ophelia is interesting because she's such a people pleaser. Like from the beginning of the show,
it's a good way to say it.
Her whole life is defined by these men, by her brother and by her dad, and then later by like her relationship with Hamlet. And she I don't think there's ever a time in the play where like Ophelia is completely acting of her own wants. Like it's all these people saying like, here's what you should do this, and this will turn out good for you. And she's like, okay. And then she does it, and then she ends up going crazy and drowning.
Yeah.
And it sucks. And I think what's interesting with Ophelia is like, I don't know if this is just my opinion on her. Well, okay. What's hard with Ophelia is it feels like, at least until her dad dies, the whole play is about like her relationship with Hamlet and like how she's trying to manage that. Because like in the beginning of the play, her relationship with her brother and her dad is good. Like it's good. She's like, Laertes, I love you. Have so much fun when you're away.
She teases him. They tease each other.
Yeah, they're buds. But like even the thing that's needling her relationship with her dad is her relationship with Hamlet.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying this and like maybe this is just how I approached it because I tend to lean kind of hard into romantic relationships because I think it's fun. But it felt like even when I was like in this Ophelia mindset of like I had a very clear sense of like I feel like I care about him more than he cares about me. Like I care about preserving this relationship, but he doesn't really give a shit. And if you know like bigger context, like he has so many other things he's thinking about.
Yeah.
Whereas Ophelia is like it seems like she's not really a focal point for him in the same way that he is for her.
That's a really, really well said. And that's interesting you say that, because when I'm doing the nunnery scene, it seems to Hamlet that when she's breaking up with him, she's giving him back. Well, clearly he must be nothing to her if she's giving up all, the memories they have together, especially if it's because her dad told her to.
Yeah.
Well, then he feels very much
slighted. Yeah.
So both of them feel like more minor in each other's lives than they'd like to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the big questions of, did they have sex? Is Ophelia pregnant? Mm-hmm. And did she commit suicide? The sex question, I think yes, absolutely.
Me too.
Because all of Ophelia's songs, when she's going crazy, are about, like, this man who promises, yes, we can get married if you have sex with me, if you go to bed with me. And then she does, and he leaves.
That's right. And it's like, well, okay, Ophelia, just say it all.
Well, just lay it out for you. And that's why I'm like, yes, they're young, and yes, it was olden times. But I think that, like, it's very clear. And that's why I think they get thee to a nunnery scene, which is what, Act 3, Scene 1. Like, I think that is the moment when, like, Hamlet feels like, oh, she's breaking up with me because she's giving me back all my remembrances, all my love letters. But I think Ophelia is like, he's breaking up with me because he's, like, calling me a whore. But, like, we slept together. So the reason that I am now not pure is him.
Oh, she's going through so much pain. Poor thing. Oh.
And, like, that moment of the get thee to a nunnery thing is Hamlet breaking this promise of, like, it's okay if we sleep together because I'm going to marry you. But then when he flips and is all, get thee to a nunnery, you're, like, implying you're impure, that's when she's like, oh, so it was all for nothing.
Yeah.
Cool.
And we see it, it's not only when she talks to him, but, like, Polonius. Polonius is like, you've spent a lot of alone time with him. Mm-hmm. He has given a lot of private time to you. And he says, and you yourself have of your audience been most free and bounteous. So there's that. Oh, and Hamlet, when he's pretending to go mad in front of Polonius is Ophelia's father. When Hamlet is pretending to be mad, he's like, conception is a blessing, but not as your daughter may conceive. And but it's definitely, an allusion to, they've had sexual relations, and Shakespeare is just like, hint, hint, get it, Are you paying attention to my puns? Oh, and then Polonius is like, how pregnant sometimes his replies are. He says, so, Shakespeare is proud of that one.
Yeah.
Oh, there's another moment. When does he say, nymph in all thy horizons be all my sins remembered?
That's in Get Thee to a Nunnery, I think.
When Hamlet says that to Ophelia, remember all my sins. And I read something like, how would she remember his sins if they didn't
have a sin together? Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, there's that.
I love it.
Yeah. What do you think about to go to a nunnery? There's different interpretations of that too. What is a nunnery to you?
I think it's simultaneously this thing of, like, you're impure, like, this is the only way you can save yourself. Mm-hmm. But I also think you could read into it, like, this is the only way to save yourself. Like, go because I want you to be saved. And, like, I care about you. The only way you're going to get out of this mess is if you hightail it out of here and go to a nunnery. Mm-hmm. But I think that the way that Ophelia hears it, especially if they've had sex, that is like, oh God, like, he thinks, like, terribly of me. And, like, this is him breaking up with me.
Yeah. Even though he feels like she broke up with him.
I know. In that scene, in the Get Thee to a Nunnery scene, there are Polonius and Claudius.
Yeah, they're both
are
there.
listening into their conversation. Mm-hmm. And so then it begs the question of, like, does Hamlet know there are people listening, and is he purposefully being harsh with her because he knows other people are around?
There's one point where he says, "Is your father home?" And she's like, where is your father? And she says, "He's at home, my lord." And I think Hamlet asks that to test her to see if she will respond with the truth or lie, and she chooses to lie. Does he say to go to a nunnery before or after that? I'd be interested to check out.
It's after. Before and after. Like,
Okay.
he says, go thy ways to a nunnery, where's your father? And then he keeps on with it.
Okay. And maybe, you could still say he knew before he even said that, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now, is she pregnant?
The evidence most people bring in is the fact that one of the flowers she gives is rue, which was, like, used as an abortive drug. I think it's interesting if she's pregnant, but I don't know if I necessarily, care.
Okay, fine.
Because I also think...
Can...
but I also think that this is something that I talked about with Anthony, spring quarter, when we were doing Hamlet, and he was Hamlet, and I was Ophelia.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, well, if she's pregnant, then what is that? Like, they must have had sex, after Hamlet got back from Wittenberg.
Yeah.
After his dad died. Well, because, if they had had sex before he left for college, then that was, a long time ago. And she would be, visibly pregnant by then.
Right, yeah.
Which I guess is a route you could take, but I think that
Is Elizabethan dress? Could it hide it?
I don't really think so.
I don't know.
But then I think whether or not she's pregnant messes with that timeline a little bit. So
you don't think she showed up at his dorm room and
maybe that's kind of fun. Of I'm gonna go visit Hamlet at college. See ya.
See ya.
And they hooked up, and it was like,
we don't know.
I don't know. Do you think she's pregnant?
I think the rue is. What else? What else could it be used for? Because it's not only for.
I don't know.
But it's if you aren't going to interpret it that way, how else are you supposed to take it? Is my question.
It is sometimes applied directly to the skin to treat arthritis, sprains, injuries.
No,
of
it's
the
definitely
bone,
arthritis. You're right.
swollen
Ophelia has
skin,
arthritis.
earaches, toothaches, headaches, tumors, and warts. And it's insect repellent. Maybe there's just a lot of bugs.
She's like, oh god, I need this. I've been itching
She's
for
like,
days.
God, I need some rue because your fucking castle has so many bugs.
So yeah, there's the rue. Oh, and a nunnery could also be a place that unmarried pregnant women go to for help.
True.
It's back to, what does Gertrude know? And particularly of Ophelia, what do you think Gertrude knows about Hamlet and Ophelia's relationship?
I don't know. Ophelia seems like the kind of person who's gonna I kind of don't think she's told Laertes because he has the whole monologue at the beginning of don't give it up too easily.
Use protection.
And I think it's also more interesting if Ophelia's too late, during that whole scene.
Right. Oh, right. No, totally, yeah.
But with Gertrude, I feel like she probably is able to put two and two together.
Mm-hmm.
I think also, Ophelia being so people pleaser and being so adhering so strongly to what the men in her life want her to do, Polonius and Laertes probably are kind of blinded to anything other than the idea of Ophelia as this perfect virginal.
So yeah.
She's the baby of the family and we all dote on her, and because also, where's her mom? We don't know.
And if Gertrude and Claudius were hooking up before they got married,
then Gertrude might be more receptive to something going on with Ophelia and Hamlet in a way that Ophelia's family they couldn't, because they see her as this perfect virgin baby.
When Ophelia dies, Gertrude is able to describe it really descriptively. That was maybe redundant, but maybe not. And you're like, did she see it? Is this just exposition? It can't be just exposition. Shakespeare's smarter than that, right?
Yeah. That's interesting. I never thought about that. God, you're great. Your brain.
It's not great. It's some research too, I promise. But yeah, did Gertrude, did Ophelia confide in her before she was, about what she was thinking?
Well, I mean, because the scene before Ophelia comes in and is singing her songs and is crazy in front of everyone, Gertrude saw her first and was able to be she comes into the scene first and is guys, Ophelia's crazy.
Oh, that's her?
And
Gertrude says
that? Yeah, and everyone's oh my god, that's so sad. And then Ophelia comes in and is looking for Gertrude.
There's got to be there's a story there that we're not being told. I think, but it is. I mean, yeah, part of the times, but like just how much shame there was for Ophelia to have to be, if she was pregnant, whether or not she was, but if she had sexual relations, but to be in this relationship and with the shame around a pregnancy before marriage is, and the fact that she's driven to suicide for those actions, and Hamlet.
Well, do you think it's suicide?
Oh, good question. What other theories are there?
Just that she drowned. That she was like crazy and
I
fell
see,
in the river and drowned.
Yeah, my brain like is now preconceived that it's suicide. I forgot that it was like not necessarily that. No, it doesn't have to be, but what was okay? So you Violet have done a play called Ophelia.
Yes, so there's this play, Ophelia by Megan Brown, that I did a scene from, where it's implied that she doesn't jump in the river to drown herself, but she does have a conscious moment where she stops fighting it.
Oh,
and is like, I'm okay with dying.
I remember that monologue.
Which
she does it very well.
I like that idea. I like that idea that like maybe her falling into the river was not on purpose, but she does have a conscious moment where she's like, but I'm not going to fight this.
And I mean, that really juxtaposes Hamlet with all these questions of suicide and what is the point of life and hanging on, to have a character that lets go. And the gender differences between that and what that says. There's a lot to unpack.
What was our last queer? Hamlet, Horatio? Okay, the buddies. Horatio is such a good friend. Like, Horatio is the only one who's like, I believe you, man. I'm with you.
Yeah. And this play needs that. This play needs someone you can trust on that stage. And someone for Hamlet to trust and to explain what his plans are, because the audience needs to be filled in. But yeah, Horatio is definitely, this relationship between them is like the light of this very dark play where no one is to be trusted. Yeah.
And I also think it's interesting of like Horatio is the one that Hamlet trusts. It's not Ophelia. Like he doesn't confide in her in the same way that he confides in Horatio. And I think there's something to be said maybe about the fact that, well, they went to college together, but like, did Horatio grow up with Hamlet?
I think they just met in college, whereas Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are more childhood friends.
Interesting. Okay. I think that's interesting then, of like, he doesn't trust anybody from home, but maybe it's the fact that Horatio like is his college best friend who like comes home with him.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's comforting for him. Also to know that like Horatio doesn't have running with this like their college friends thing. Horatio doesn't have any other relationships here besides Hamlet. Like he's there solely to be Hamlet's friend. Whereas like everyone else is all intertwined with each other.
Oh, for sure. That's a good way of saying it too. Yeah. Well, why doesn't Hamlet tell like Ophelia I'm going mad? What is that? Because that surprises me when he compares his love for Ophelia to Laertes' love. He just says like, I give like 1,000 sons of it. That's not the line, but
the celestial in my soul's idol.
Oh, that's very good. Thank you, Violet.
I only know that line because it's in Ophelia now.
But yeah, why would he not give that information to someone he supposedly cares so deeply about?
Well, I think because Ophelia is such a daddy's girl. Yeah. Because he's scared that she's going to turn around and tell Polonius or Laertes or like Gertrude or Claudius. I think that like I kind of understand like why Hamlet might be kind of wary about letting Ophelia in on everything, is because Ophelia, she proves time and time again that like she's going to follow her dad's rules.
But I wish there was a scene depicting that.
True. And maybe if they had sex, Ophelia feels guilty, so now she's like, I have to follow my dad's rules more than ever. So sorry, Hamlet. Yeah. Like, you got one thing out of me, but like...
I read something interesting, too, about the contrast between the relationship between Horatio and Ophelia, whereas, like, Hamlet, you could say, causes Ophelia to die, but he prevents Horatio from dying.
Mm. Well, there's some people who theorize that, like, Hamlet and Horatio are in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And Ophelia is just sort of the, like, woman that Hamlet was betrothed to back home.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
I think it's a fun take on it. I think
Right.
it makes Ophelia's character, like, in some ways harder, but in some ways also, like, mean even less.
They're not mutually exclusive.
True.
Hamlet could be bisexual, biromantic,
Mm-hmm.
and have strong feelings for both.
For both of them, yeah.
There's a very interesting part when Rosencrantz and Hamlet are talking, and Hamlet is like, "Man delights not me," just saying like he's over humanity, like he's done with it all. And Rosencrantz laughs, and Hamlet's like, "Okay, that's not what women don't make me happy either. That I mean, like people in general,
Like, in general.
right?" And then he's like, "Why were you laughing when I said man delights not me?" Like, offended that Rosencrantz laughed at the possibility of Hamlet being gay.
Interesting.
And Rosencrantz says, I wasn't laughing.
It's like, not what I meant, but...
Not what I was talking about.
Uh-huh.
Man delights not me, no, nor women neither, though by your smiling you seem to say so. Okay, so yeah, is Hamlet straight, and he accidentally implied he's gay, which he didn't mean, and Rosencrantz was laughing at that. There's also the possibility, man delights not me, Rosencrantz laughs because Rosencrantz knows Hamlet has attraction towards men, and he's like, okay, that's also not what I meant. It could go either way. I would guess that if Hamlet is attracted to men that Rosencrantz doesn't know, I feel like they're not on that level.
I feel like it's a college thing.
And I agree.
Like...
they make jokes about women a lot. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and Hamlet before that. So if that was, like, I feel like Hamlet was very, straight with them. And is this making sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely like an unwavering trust and support between Hamlet and Horatio. Mm-hmm. You don't get, I don't think, like that flirty energy that you might find between, say, Romeo and Mercutio, like that teasing energy, but it is a passionate love language for sure.
Yes.
I found this one. This is when Hamlet is saying to Horatio, "Since my dear soul was mistress of her choice, and could of men distinguish, her election hath sealed thee for herself. Since my soul, ever since I could choose for myself who I wanted in my life, I chose you." And that, I mean, I think that's a beautiful line for whatever relationship they have, of course.
Yeah. I think also that's indicative of, like, going to college, finally getting an opportunity to surround himself by who he wants to surround himself with, and not by, like, well, especially if you're growing up in the royal family in Denmark, like,
right?
I doubt he had much choice in who he was surrounded by.
True.
And, like, I think that's really important, this thing of, like, Hamlet being like, I finally got the chance to pick who I wanted to be in my life, and I picked you.
That's really sweet. Yeah.
That's so nice. Yeah. Horatio's a G. I love Horatio.
Good guy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Eternal Lines. Jacob and I will be back soon with more Hamlet in a couple weeks, so keep up with us on Instagram and social media for when that comes out. I hope you are all doing well, and we will talk to you very soon. Lots of love. Eternal Lines is a podcast project hosted by the Shakespeare Company at UCLA. It is hosted by Violet Morris, with sound design by Elizabeth Smith and music by Kay Sybil. Thanks so much.